Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 616. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge. I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible bridge-defying, is feverishly working with Harley Quinn to come up with a cool name for his lair, and he's the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about the Injustice direct animation release that just came out from DC. We're going to do it watch-along style. So if you have it, get ready to queue it up. We'll actually count you down very early on in the episode. We are supported, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Yeah, we always talk about the different comics and some apparel and some statues and whatnot, but you know what else they have? They've got a games section, really cool pre-order section on various role-playing games, support pieces, manuals, and whatnot. But right now, I'm looking at the Batman Dark Knight Returns board game and the deluxe edition of the Batman Dark Knight Returns board game. These are based on Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns comic. So it's actually a play-along that follows the plot and storyline and whatnot of that iconic story. So 25% off. Thank you, DCBS.
That was a Kickstarter, too, which I supported the Kickstarter. So it's cool that now it's being released. And that's the nice thing about Kickstarters nowadays. They're used to fund and get these projects going. So I'm glad to see that that's finally coming to light because that means I'll be getting mine. But I love that that's available for people now because it's cool to see games like that coming out. InStockTrades.com is your source for your collected edition needs. Speaking of animation, they have some very cool trade paperbacks around Batman Adventures. Batman Adventures Cat Got Your Tongue trade paperback, $9.99 regularly, 60% off, only $3.99. Batman Adventures Riddle Me This trade paperback, $9.99 regularly, 65% off, only $3.49. Batman Adventures Robin the Boy Wonder trade paperback, again, $9.99 regularly, 65% off, only $3.49. $3.49 for a trade paperback. I mean, come on. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We are going in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the Injustice animated series. So come on, turn it on, enjoy, and watch along with us, and have a good day.
Let's talk Injustice. You were very polite on that, by the way.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Aquaman.
So, Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about Injustice, the film. And I think before we jump into that, I think we should probably talk about our respective histories with Injustice, because I know for sure that's something that's different. I've played both games. I'm heavily into reading all the comic books that, there were multiple seasons of the comic book that were released, including a Zero year that took place before it. So there's been just quite a bit of content out there, and a lot of it was written by Tom Taylor, who is a writer I really enjoy. So this is one of those things where this was a video game that spun out of, there was a Mortal Kombat versus the DC Universe video game that was created by NetherRealms, which was wow, DC heroes in a really cool fighting game with Mortal Kombat characters. Awesome, because I've always loved the Mortal Kombat games. I'm not a big fighting game, I should say I'm a big fighting game fan. I'm not good at them. So the combo moves and stuff like that where you're doing a half spin of the D-pad and all those things that are on there, that's not my thing, but I love fighting games. I love the combat. I love when I can pull off a combo and I'm like, how did I do that? Some crazy thing will happen on screen. Usually what the draw for me is when they have a story. Like any game, I'm drawn to the story. So I want to fight to get to the next step of the story. And I like the idea that I'm able to go up against a wealth of different types of characters and villains and go through that combat. So enter Injustice, where the premise of this story is one where Superman is gradually the bad guy for the purpose of explaining why the heroes are divided into two groups so the heroes can fight each other and often will team up with villains. So it explained why, because if you're going to do a DC game, who are most of the characters you want to fight with? Well, the heroes. So this gave an explanation as far as why would characters like Batman and Superman fight? Why would Green Arrow fight with Wonder Woman? You know, those type of things were the draw for the game. And it spanned these 2 sequels. So I've been a big fan from the game's inception of being able to play in the Injustice world. Again, admitting I'm not the best fighting game player of all time, but I love them. I've going back to Street Fighter days and all that kind of stuff. I've always been a fan of fighting games. Now, we are different kinds of gamers. And I'm not going to say that you're not a gamer because sometimes we misrepresent you. You are. We're just different kinds of gamers. You didn't play the Injustice games. I know that's the case. Have you read some of the comics, or how much of that have you gotten into? Like, what is your exposure to Injustice leading into this?
Exposure to Injustice is basically whatever we talked about on the show.
Okay.
It's really the only time I've read Injustice stuff. And I think the only time we really talked Injustice comic on the show was Injustice. It was Injustice Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
So that was my real deep exposure with Injustice. I knew basic kind of story, but I really didn't even know the basic story until I got that teaser at the Fandom where I saw why Superman had his turn. I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. And I'm so glad you never really spoiled that for me. You never told me. You was like, oh, I think you remember you saying there's a story reason why the heroes are fighting, and that's as far as you went because you didn't want to spoil it for me. Outside I'd ever would see the story or play the game or whatnot. So it was kind of neat that I really didn't know it going into until the Fandom tease, and then even the Fandom tease didn't give the whole story behind it. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So my true initial exposure with Injustice is this movie right here. The comic book that I read, it was a cool comic. That was an awesome story and whatnot. It really wasn't true Injustice exposure. There was a lot of, I just went into that knowing that, Superman and various people were considered the bad guys, and some of the bad guys were considered good guys, and yada yada. So I didn't really have a deep well when we read that story. So going into this movie, I've got a lot of openings, and it was kind of neat, for me.
It is one of those stories that once you know the premise behind it, it changes the tone of everything else that you read relating to it, because you understand the foundation of it. This was interesting. This film, I think it's a great gateway. It has to compress, because believe it or not, it has to compress the Injustice story because the Injustice story is huge now, especially because it spanned 2 games which had very well developed storylines, and then the wealth of comic book exploration of this has expanded the world even further. So this has really grown into this very cool phenomenon. And I would recommend, if you enjoyed this, definitely delve into the games, definitely delve into the comics for people that are out there. There's not a wrong way, I think, to get into the Injustice world. It's really impressive what they've done here. The first thing I'd say right from the get-go is this is Elseworlds, and it embraces everything that's great about Elseworlds. And some of my favorite Elseworlds stories are the ones that start off feeling like they're our Earth, and then something goes horribly wrong. And it completely changes things. So it was an interesting sort of story. How did you like this film? Because you're like this. That was really one of the things I didn't know how much. I really didn't know how much Injustice you'd read. If you'd read anything beyond the stuff that we've talked about on the show. So you really went into this one pretty blind. How did you like this?
I loved it. This is one of those movies where I wish it wasn't a single movie, but a series of movies, and really dive deep into the Injustice universe. You think about, we get a beginning, middle, and end in this one movie. Mm-hmm. I would have rather one movie just be the beginning, and die, and then the second movie is the middle, then the third movie is the end, and actually spread this out and actually, dive deep into the building of the Resistance and the final battle, and the final battle, was like 15 minutes, I think, in this movie. Imagine if that final battle was an hour. How long? How much? Because it was cool in this movie. But imagine how more cooler it would be if it was an hour-long movie where the entire thing was that final battle. Plus the epilogue. They could have very easily had a nice lengthy epilogue. But I absolutely love this movie to the point where I want more. That's one of the things that really does show a good movie when you walk away from it going, I wish it was more. I wish this was a 3-hour. I wish this was a 12-issue weekly series. Give me more of this. So it 100% has me looking into the comics and the Injustice universe. I may actually even try the game. I'm not sure yet, to be honest with you. I got to do some research on the gameplay and all that stuff. But because we've had lengthy conversations about me and gameplay, but it 100% has me looking into that comic book stuff because
I openly will admit I stink at fighting games. I don't do the combo. Like, they have these wonderful things that are out there. Now they're built into the game where you can see like all the combo moves that the heroes can do. I can do some of them. And when I say some of them, they're the ones that are the really basic where it's like push the D-pad back, then push it forward, then push a button. I'm like, okay, I can pull that off I wouldn't say most of the time, some of the time to success. And it's rewarding when you can do that. But honestly, I'm a jump, punch, kick, bob and weave kind of guy because of the fact that that's all I can do. And yet I enjoy it. I enjoy the experience of being there with the characters, with the villains that you're fighting. And for me, gaming is a lot about story progression. So if a game has a good story, that is a draw for me. Games that don't have story modes, I'm less interested in. I'll play them and enjoy them, but I like games with story modes, and that's what drew me to this. It's like, you're giving me a DC game that has an Elseworlds story mode? Wow. And it's great? Cool. Then it spun into comics, and I didn't expect the amount of comic expansion they have, because this really has this immensely huge, fully realized comic book world. So if for anybody listening to this, if this was your first exposure, first of all, I loved it, what they did with the movie, because it's hard to do exactly what you're talking about here. Compress this into a satisfying beginning, middle, and ending in a film. And they had to do that because of the fact that these films usually are, unless it's like you're doing like Long Halloween or something like that, where it's an intended two-parter, these films typically are set up to be, I mean, there's room for a sequel to this. They could do a sequel still, but they're really meant to be done in one movies for, where maybe in the future we'll revisit this world and continue it, but any one of these can be watched independently of each other. For the time frame that they have, because these have pretty much a set time limit usually on them, I thought they did a really satisfying job with this. And agreeing with everything you're saying, yeah, I wanted more. I would love this to be done as a Young Justice-like series where, there's multiple television seasons of this. And they still can do that, where they just tell the story in a more expanded form. For what this is and the limitations of time that they had, I thought they did a really good job with the script of this, because I think it covers a lot of ground.
Oh, big time. They seriously covered, as I said, beginning, middle, and end of a story. They had a full, complete story told in a short window. To be honest, when you look at the time of this, it is really a short window to do that. So, again, kudos to creation team on this event, on this story itself, just getting it, because there was never there wasn't any choppiness to it. And that's something that sometimes happens when you have this massive story that you condense down. The story can seem choppy, and it can seem like, they skipped some stuff. But this one had a nice flow through going through all the different parts. It, built on each other nicely. And, and that was kind of I really enjoyed this one. This was, we always joke around saying whenever we watch one of these animated, it's like, oh, this is now my favorite. I honestly can say this is my favorite right now because this is a really good story. I was like, as I said, if it makes me want to immediately go out and buy the comics and go out and look into researching on the game, maybe I'll play this game. That really tells you this was something solid.
Yeah, and that is something, especially when, admittedly, you've said, I shy away from these type of games because my comfort level isn't great with them. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just know, like, that's going to affect your experience, right? if you're not comfortable playing the game, that's going to affect your experience. But to sit there and go, well, I might dip my toe in something I'm uncomfortable with because I like the story so much. I openly admit, fighting games, I love them. I am never going to be somebody who's really, unless the controls are very simplified, I'm never going to be somebody that's super good. Like, I go online on these fighting games, I get my butt handed to me. But I enjoy the experience. I mean, it's a fun game. I just know that, like, I'm never going to be a competitive fighting gamer. I love fighting games. I love the experience of what they do, and especially when they've got a story mode like this. We're at the film, and we've queued it up, and we're watching it digitally. We're 35 seconds in, and for those of you who maybe are on the Blu-ray or the DVD and maybe are trying to line up with us, 35 seconds in pauses us at the DC logo in blue. So that's what we're looking at right now. There's 1:18:06 left in the film as I'm looking at it right now. That might look a little bit different depending on what platform you're on, but if you see the blue DC logo, you're right where we are. You're ready to start. So I'm going to go ahead and do a countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. The little logo's vanishing. It feels very sad.
I know.
This is a great opening, man. The shot of Metropolis going in there because for you it had to have been great because you didn't know what was coming.
I know. Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat. Oh, there's Perry, sipping on the coffee and just relaxing. I'm like, man, this is okay. I knew, as I said from the teaser from the Fandom, I knew what happens to Lois. And I knew, so just this opening scene of them together, I'm like, oh, this is kind of nice, and, heart beating, and then next thing you know, wait a minute, and here was the big shock to me. I had no idea she was pregnant. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then I'm like, oh, what happens to Lois? Oh, that's not good. Oh, that poor guy. And it was just like, this for me was just a great moment. Because, it's just, I loved just this sequencing and just this thinking about it and just seeing Clark's initial reaction. And you kind of forget what's about to happen.
I love how he's talking about the preschools. I want him to go to high school in Smallville. What about college? It's like planning out the whole life, which is the excitement of a parent, right? And it makes this so endearing. Some of this is different than the story in the game and the story in the comics because they had to compress it, which is nice for people that did play the game or read the comic because of the fact that they have to change it up a little bit. When I say change it up, the story beats are the same, but the hows are a little bit different. And I thought they did a really nice job of creating some emotion here with this because I was excited for him. And I knew what was coming. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't know that I should be super excited for him right now because I know where this is heading.
Well, I think they did a great job with that because I knew as well from the teaser what happens to her. But I immediately kind of went away, oh, that's awesome. Oh, wait. And then, of course, you go right into the bat just kicking butt and taking names, And again, I loved this initial dynamic and dialogue between Bat and Superman. It was a really cool kind of, moment.
Justin Hartley played Superman, and Anson Mount played Batman. And boy, do they establish, because it's really important relationships. Laura Bailey's Lois Lane really did a nice job in establishing relationships very early on, because you got to care about these relationships pretty fast. And I know as comic fans or fans that have watched a lot of these movies, we already care about these relationships, but you got to care about them in the context of this film and where they're at right now, especially knowing that you've got new voices that are on there. They've got to give us a tone that we're not filling in those blanks. They're taking us on that journey, and they did. Boy, was the casting great on this.
Yeah, this is 100% is definitely Superman and Batman for me. That, now... We got Lois and Jimmy. I'm like, 100% didn't see this coming. And I was like, man, this is kind of okay. And then but I do love the fact that Lois is like, hey, something's not right here. Let's get out of here. Mm-hmm. I thought Bat was again showing coolness, and then bam.
And the way they handled Jimmy's death there,
oh my God,
it's shocking. It's brutal, and it sets up a tone here that, like. Yes, you can argue where this is going with Lois and the baby in and of itself is enough to push Superman over the edge. But it's not just that. And I've got to be careful what I'm saying that. I've got some Jimmy on my shoes. Like, it's brutal, it's harsh, it's cold. And it really is, it sets up a tone that the Joker is trying to tear him apart. And he's really got, he refers to it later as playing on easy mode. But they do some great things here, like Superman discovering Jimmy, Superman taking the shattered signal watch and looking at it. There's this, and the look on his face, I mean, the artwork is really great on this.
And then just his realization, Lois, that panic mode.
Yep.
I absolutely loved Superman in panic mode because, again, it shows why he would do some he made some mistakes here throughout this. He rushed into things, but it made sense why he did it. And also, again, shows the strategy of the Joker that he knew Soup would do this. He knew Soup would fly off the handle and wouldn't be thinking straight and wouldn't be, looking at it methodical, would fly right in, without, any hesitation. I absolutely loved how the Joker played Superman on this. This was a great story and just a great, oh my God, that is beautiful in its horrificness.
Batman realizing that Superman is out of control here too, and trying to calm him, say, "Hey, we're not alone here." And Superman calling for his help, and Batman going on the radio and really giving an on-call, saying, "Hey, this is one of ours. We need to move. It's not just any woman. It's Lois Lane." And the reference of it being Lois Lane, immediately resonates with Diana. And having her be the one that first cues in on the fact that Lois Lane, I need to jump in on this one, really sets a cool tone for this. Just how close this relationship is.
Well, and again, it's kind of neat because those who know the secret, are immediately rushing into it. And speaking of immediately rushing into it, The Flash, where, again, did not see this coming at all. But
the Joker did.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And that's the thing that's beautiful of it, is we often forget how cunning he is.
Yeah.
And you're right. I didn't see this coming either, how this was, because, you sit there and go, what are they going to cover in this and how are they going to do it? And this did a really nice job of moving things quickly, but covering a lot of ground. This sets up that this was a well-orchestrated plan of the Joker's.
Yes. He had it completely set up. Flash is off the board. And I'll tell you, that was like, holy crud. That, again, with his death, I was like, wait, what? They just killed the Flash. Holy crud. That's like amazing. And again, absolutely loved it. I was like, really, and again, when identified that Joker and Harley had Lois in a sub, Superman's flying right in. He's not hesitating. There is no delay. And that's what causes his downfall. And I absolutely, again, beautiful play on the Joker's part. This was 100%, masterful. Just, you show his intelligence. You show the cunning. You show why Bruce has difficulty with him sometimes. This is, I absolutely love this, man.
He wanted to be caught. He knew that was what was going to happen. And that was the crazy part of this whole thing. It was, we always talk about Batman. Why didn't Batman end the cycle? Why didn't, and here's the funny part. Joker is really having that with himself here. This is a cycle that has continued. I'm playing the game differently this time because he's getting bored of the cycle.
Yeah. And of course, the fear gas and seeing Doomsday, that, I'll tell you, man, I was like, and the whole thing I'm wondering is, what was Lois affected by the fear gas? What was Lois doing? What was Lois saying? When when she initially steps out.
And that's why I never told you where this was going.
Yeah,
because of the fact
which
that,
I really appreciate that. I'll be honest with you, 100% appreciate that, because this was like, oh my God, absolutely brilliant in its evil. How the Joker played him. This is the best joke ever. It'll be my masterpiece. I'm like, oh my God. Yes, it is.
And it's beyond just the death of his wife, because what the Joker's done here is psychologically, he's putting Superman in a position where he is responsible.
Yep.
And even though it was the Joker orchestrating it, even though it was a Joker who did it, There's no way that you can't feel like you're a part of it, even though you were manipulated into it. You should have known. You second-guessed yourself. He watched one of his closest friends die. The Flash has died. Lois has been killed now. His unborn child has been killed.
Yep.
And now, because of what has happened here, one step beyond that, in that moment of death, now Metropolis is blown up. And it's killed everyone that he's ever worked with, everyone he's ever associated with. His entire city that he's protected has been destroyed because of this maniac. All for a joke. All to do this. It was absolutely deliberate. And there's no two ways about it. That's where this gets really heady. Because now you've got a psychological conundrum here. You've got a philosophical conundrum here. Where you can debate over this for years. Who's right in this one? And there's ambiguous gray areas in the middle. Where you're like, what? Which side would you be on? There's points in time where you can teeter-totter. This debate between the Joker and Batman is so brilliantly written.
Oh God, yeah, and I'll tell you, and it's funny because you 100%, because Joker is that maniacal, crazy guy, but there is this level of, again, planning, strategy, whatever you want to call it, but he has that cunning. He 100% played him, and I love the fact that between the debate between Joker and Batman about what do you think this will do to Superman. He's breaking Superman right now. Batman lost everything, and he became Batman. What does Superman become? I just love that notion. I absolutely love these sequences coming up. Especially, I like Hal trying to talk him down. Again, his friends are recognizing, hey, you're grieving. You've been through something horrific. Right now, you don't need to be near him. We're trying to help you. And Hal's sitting there trying to, calm him down, talk him down, just get him to stop and think. But again, you really see the power of Superman. He takes the ring off of Hal's hand. That's how powerful, that's how fast he is. I'm like, oh man, that is awesome.
Again, a Superman unchecked.
Yeah.
This is where he's changing it. We're seeing a very, very different Superman at this point.
And I love the line, don't do something you'll regret later. I already have. Superman already has done that horrific thing that he will regret the rest of his life.
Right.
So he's right there. And that, for me, was a huge thing, a huge statement that had to be said, and a huge moment that Superman's already crossed the line. He's already taken a life. He 100% says their death is on him. All those deaths are on him.
Oh, Batsy, you honestly think he'll still be fun to play with. Batman is just bound and determined to hold on to his friend.
Yep.
And who he is. And that his belief in Superman is something we all believe in. And I think we all have this idea of Superman, and I believe it too. But this is an interesting point. What happens if? And that's what this is. This is like the Marvel's what if, right? This is the greatest what if scenario. What if there was something that really could push Superman over the edge? And that's the whole premise of this story, is pushing it that far. And I think this film did a really great job opening up why this was so reactionary, why it was so fast. Superman did not have time to think, to grieve, to get to that point. There was no grieving opportunity.
He just punched through him.
Right.
And I love the look of horror on Bat's face. And then even the realization look on Clark's face. This was, for me, just one of those amazing moments where you're like, he punched through a human being. Superman just killed. I'm like, oh my God, that is amazing. That is one of those things where you're just like, whoa.
And now he has to decide how he feels about that.
Yeah. It's funny because just thinking about, because I've been thinking off page a lot on this one. And if right after killing, if Bruce had continued to try to talk him down and continue to say, hey, it's okay. What you did had to be done, but let's just keep it calm and not be oppositionary to Clark, maybe this story would have played out differently.
It's one thing I will say out of this. If you enjoy this, read the comics, because the comics do have an expanded. I'm trying not to spoil the comics,
right? No, I
because
get you.
we're not talking in depth. The comics have a much more expanded storyline with this, and really cover some ground at different times that I think you'll find satisfying. That's the great part about the Injustice world right now is it's expanded into so much media that you get like these extended stories. I love Harley Quinn in this.
Yes.
The actress who plays Harley Quinn really does, it's Gillian Jacobs, really does a great job on the voice of the character. Her interplay with Ollie is fantastic because Batman can't be this role. And really taking an advantage of who Green Arrow is, some of the things that, the beard bit's great,
Yeah. Well,
how can your beard look ridiculous and cute at the same time?
Oh, what's this? Oh, you.
Really, really good stuff.
Yeah. See, now, this sequence here where it's the Trinity in the Watchtower.
Yeah.
Here's where Bruce really could have turned it around. But, again, what Bruce needed to do was drop the cowl, and he needed to be Bruce Wayne, not Batman. And he needed to, instead of, talking to him like how, with, you're better than this, you can't do it. He needed to be his friend and, be there and grieve and stuff like that and actually show emotion. I think if he had done that, this may have been a different story. But again...
But he didn't... Here's the thing. He didn't have a chance to get there because of this. And right. I agree with everything you're saying, but Wonder Woman becomes now a catalyst on this one. Because she's basically criticizing... There is no room for Batman here because it's not just combating what Superman has done. Now he's combating Wonder Woman feeding this. Wonder Woman's feeding the beast. She's stoking the fire. So I don't know that Batman had a choice on this one. I think you were right in the sense that if there was a time to do it, it was right after right in that moment when the Joker died. Batman should have said, Clark, let's go and talk. We really need to talk about this. You need to decompress. Let's talk about what just happened, how you got here. Let me help you. There was the opportunity there. I think at the Watchtower, it's too late because Diana's already involved and Diana's being a catalyst. And I'm agreeing with you in your premise that Batman did have a window for this. You're 100% correct. I think the window was before now, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, I'm not knocking the story. I love this story. So it's one of those things where this is me thinking off the page. And again, even when Clark still did this first country, where he first took down the first country, there still could have been a window for Bruce to calm his friend down and get him from going full on heel. He's done a heel turn, but there's still some room to bring him back, maybe. But again, I love how the story plays out where you really don't get that opportunity. There's these little windows that Bruce has that quickly disappear because of various circumstances. Like you said, Wonder Woman the one time, back down in the cave, there's, emotions run high. There's a lot of stuff that happens there. So I think it's really kind of cool.
And it's not just with Wonder Woman. Later on, we're going to see it with his son. I mean, this is stuff that happens along the way. Bruce is not good at this. And I think this story establishes that, too. I love this bit with the arrow cave versus the quiver.
Yeah. I agree with her. It sounds better.
It does. And he does, too. Yeah. Jokerfish was all me.
Yeah. Well, again, little funny moments like that did not take away from this movie. I think that is also a really cool statement of the comedic, of the writing. It doesn't, funny bits not taken away from the seriousness of the movie.
I would actually argue added to it. I think there's a great balance in this. Humor's important because you have to believe that Harley Quinn's a wacky character, but at the same time there has to be a believability to it. And they find that, which is crazy to say with Harley Quinn, they find that really cool balance. This is awesome. Where he's like, at this point, he's not thinking anymore because he's not even thinking about his dad at this point. He's like, Lois is dead. I'm going to tell people who I am. This is what I'm doing. He's basically saying, I'm taking over. And in that moment that he's saying that he's taking over, He is no longer thinking about consequences to those closest to him. Because there's not many still around, in his mind, of that circle. And he's also thinking they wouldn't dare. With this immediate ceasefire, he's like, I'm going to get everything under control so that way this can't happen again. Not thinking that there's going to be pushback due to this. Yeah,
and again, it's neat because he's like, how he's flat out saying, hey, I'm stopping all hostility, all violence. It's done. I don't care if you're a dictator, a freedom fighter, or whatnot. He's going on it. And I love how initially he's going after these countries where everyone there's basically no argument in the world community that these are bad guys, But eventually you got to get through all of them, and now you're doing into the rest of the world, Israel, Palestine. Where you will agree to these terms, or I will make you agree to these terms. Right there, that's like really huge. What he's doing. And I love the debate among the heroes about how this is not right or this is what we need to do. And it's beautiful stuff going back and forth between Wonder Woman and Batman on this.
But then you start seeing that this is starting to push people to pull out completely. So we've got some heroes that are literally going off planet, going back to their realms, things like that, because of the fact that they're like, I can't be a part of this. This Justice League is no longer the Justice League I joined up for. So that's where this kind of which laws to enforce one law, do what's... I mean, there's debates here that are completely imploding the Justice League.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's really kind of neat about, what law is to be enforced. Mm-hmm. Again, you can say, oh, don't do what's right. Well, speeding, it's against the law. So is speeding a death penalty? I ran a red light. Is that against the law? It's against the law. I broke the law, but what is my punishment on that? And I think that is kind of neat how they're initially starting this. And even Plastic Man had that great line where he's like, hey, I'm a 3-time criminal. I had to have multiple chances before I actually, turn my life around. What about guys like me? It is kind of neat, where you think about it, where it's not just a simple statement of do what's right. There is a lot of gray in the law as to yes, it's a crime, but how severe of a crime is it?
The relationship between Diana and Bruce and seeing just how cold it's gotten at this point. At last we agree on something. As the heroes are kind of splitting off and kind of going their own way or joining their respective camps is really interesting.
I love this fact that the U.S. military is finally going to be in Superman's sights.
Yeah.
And U.S. is going to take out some drug dealers, some terrorists, and Soup stops it because innocent lives were in danger. Not only takes it out, but then takes out all the drones in the area. That, for me, was just a great statement and a really cool, okay, now it's getting real. Now it's getting serious. What's going to happen? He's going against the U.S. now. What's their response? I love this because I was like, this is not going to end well for the U.S.
A bit that we glossed over before that I do want to talk about real quick was Plastic Man's speech about the fact, like, listen, I needed second, third, and fourth chances before I turned my life around. So I really liked that he spoke up as a former villain saying, I'm a hero now, guys. I wouldn't have gotten here without the chance.
Yep.
This was one of my favorite sequences in this, that they brought Jonathan Kent in and it was the government that took him.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty critical at this moment to show we've escalated and now everything that he's trying to prevent, he's actually increasing.
Yeah, this was funny because when I was watching, I'm like, oh my God, this has got to be the dumbest thing they have ever done. You do not go after Jonathan Kent. What were they thinking? That is not good, not smart. Oh my God.
Now, Superman having this fight, this verbal warfare with Mirror Master, who's now holding all the cards. And I love Mirror Master's powers because there's times where, and they've had some great Flash stories where they've explored this, he is a lot more powerful than he's ever given credit for. It's not just about jumping in and out of mirrors. he's able to utilize any reflective surfaces to travel from place to place. And it's a realm that he controls the entry and exit from. So it gives him an immense amount of power as long as it goes back to strategy, right? Yep. He's able to use some really cool strategy in order to pull all this off. This does force Clark to really start questioning, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Am I doing the right thing or not? This validates some of what you said earlier. If just the right person had gotten to him, and whether it was Bruce or somebody else, or even his father, if you talked to Jonathan Kent, there was no opportunity for that, really.
See, and again, I agree with you. There was no opportunity, but here's the turning point. If this had been Bruce at the Fortress of Solitude and not Diana, the story would have changed. Here's where Spock could have changed it. If Bruce had been there saying, don't worry, Clark, we're working on this. We are looking for him. We will find him. But instead it's Diana saying, we will find him. And Bruce didn't join in the search, to find Mirror Master.
Well, that's not true. That's not true.
Well, he didn't join Diana's search. If he was doing his own search.
Right.
But Clark didn't know that Bruce was doing that. If Bruce had been more open and honest in discussion and told him, hey, I'm in on this. I got this, buddy.
Again,
it could have changed stuff.
This is very Batman. I mean, and that's one of the things that this writing plays off for. Bruce does this stuff behind the scenes. So he was helping him. I mean, so at the end, you can sit there and go, well, he just wasn't communicating.
Exactly. And that's one of Bruce's classic, it's an ingrained flaw that he always has that a lot of times does come back and bite him, like it is in this story. So again, beautiful work on this story. I absolutely love this because it 100% feels like, this to me 100% feels like Diana, feels like Superman, feels like Batman. It's just even seeing the Big Blue Boy Scout do his heel turn, the way they play it out, they did an absolute beautiful job explaining it. Why multiple layers of what that caused him to cross the line as far as he's crossed. I absolutely love that, how they really went into that. And again, even had moments when it could have possibly turned back. He could have possibly turned back, but because of the circumstances, that didn't happen. I love that. And again, this is the stuff that has me thinking off page and just, what if I had been, what if I had been there? What if I could have done this? Or what if I was Batman? How would I have handled it? It's absolutely brilliant.
So now you've got this real danger right now because this has happened.
Yep. And
Batman knows what's happened. And this is the part where you see you don't touch a man's parents. And Batman's realizing, if I tell Superman what I've found out, and this is where Batman's in a catch-22, this will only escalate things. Batman's seeing the big picture, and he knows what's going to happen if Superman were to know about this. He's going to start a chain of events down that will never end. He's trying to keep this keep all of this under control, and it's a futile cause. Because it's already spun out of control.
Okay, Damian and Dick Grayson, man. This was another one. I did not see where this story was going. But I am like, yeah, Damian, this is cool. And I loved, again, the Dick Grayson big brother, just the vibe of cool that Dick Grayson has in this. 100% had me sold, and I was like absolutely loving this. Again, this right here is another one of the things that shows the writing team, the creative team behind this really gets these characters, really understands who Nightwing, who Damian are. He really understood that. I absolutely feel this is awesome, man.
He always dodges out of the way. Would he have in that case if Superman hadn't caught it?
I think so.
Well, because it was pretty darn close.
Yeah, but he was getting ready. I think he was getting ready to move.
Yeah. They took my father and you couldn't be bothered to help. And like Batman's saying, I was. And, there's no follow-up to that. No follow-up question. Superman's already convinced at this point that Batman did not help.
Exactly.
And I think their relationship's taken a major hit at this point.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's and this is a classic stuff with Batman and Bruce, with just that, as you said, this is him. And even Dick Grayson said, he's a little more broody than normal. So it is that, you understand why they're doing it, and you just want to reach in the show, smack him, say, Bruce.
And it's not just Bruce, though, on this one. Because, Superman knows him better, too. So, you've got two people right now where it's like sitting here. Trust is a very powerful thing. And when you don't have trust in the most extreme situations, it gets really bad because Superman's hitting Batman below the belt here, too.
Yeah.
So, he thinks he's trying to reason with Bruce to a certain extent on this one. See it my way. And that's not happening here.
Now, if Bruce had taken Clark's hand right there, if Bruce had said, hey, I'll be by your side on this, and actually gone with him along with this, could that have turned this from as dark of world as it comes? If the Trinity had actually, stand tall together, would this have gone as far as it went? I don't know. And that's one of the things I love thinking about is if Bruce had been there, if Bruce had, sided with him, could he have, tempered him?
The problem is siding with him, though, you're endorsing it. And how do you do that? How do you endorse this? So it is a catch-22, right? Because in endorsing it, it's going to continue to a certain extent, and now you're part of it. So it's icky. Is what and I hate. I mean, it's like lack of a better technical term, but it's a situation where how far do you go for a friend in that case? Yep. Do you side with something that you believe is morally wrong? And it is. I mean, that's where this is a great story because you can really debate around the table over this. Because I get your point, and I actually agree with everything you're saying. If Bruce has taken his hand there, Bruce would have become a lot more of a confidant. Could he have maybe kept it from escalating? Maybe, right. Except look at his closest confidant was Diana, and Superman gets to a point where Diana no longer's heard.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if Bruce had been along, Ra's al Ghul probably would not have become part of the group, and that you would change things dramatically. Now, Clark is crossed the line; he's gone over the edge. So it is, interesting whether Bruce would be able to stop anything.
But again, it's actually Ra's al Ghul, though, that actually, we'll talk about it later, is a catalyst to Superman kind of coming to his side of the angels again.
Now, again, I love the fact that Damian is turning on his father over this.
Yeah.
Again, this feels very real, very true to who Damian is. And I like the fact that Bruce recognizes, hey, we can't bring Damian along with us, but he doesn't realize that what Damian's going to do next, which, again, it's partially Bruce is not 100% thinking clearly. Clark is obviously not 100% thinking clearly. So we've got two heroes who their intelligence is some of their strongest qualities aren't 100% on their A game. So it is kind of neat seeing Bruce be Bruce, but still make some mistakes.
Yeah.
Hero Harley.
I like that, and I like that how he's even starting to refer to it as the quiver now.
The quiver, yes.
I would watch a movie with Green Arrow and Harley Quinn, buddy cop.
Yes. Oh, big time.
They really are a good combination.
Yes, and the right level of comedy, the right level of whatnot to it. I tell you, these two work well together. Now. We're not going to get a sequel on the Harley Ollie story, but
I would love though if they do, because every so often they'll do an original of these, where it's a totally original story. I'm talking about these direct releases. I would love to see something like that where they pull, and I don't know how much ability they have to do that now because there's certain key characters that they obviously want to keep spotlighting as you go forward for timing wise. But I would love to see them take two characters like that who are known quantities and put them together. It would be a great view. Even if they do it as a showcase short or something like that. You know what I mean? As an add-on?
Yep.
There'd be a cool opportunity there. Here's the thing: we're always going to want more than what we can get.
Yes, big time. Always want more. And I think that's a statement of how good of a story it is. And I absolutely love this sequence in Arkham, especially Zaz, man. This right here is he touched a nerve with Superman about how, yeah, you got your first scar. You like it, the freedom it gives you. And that just says Superman, okay, that one's first. Again, it really does show that how far he's fallen, how far they've all fallen. Yep. And they're just snatching him away to a escape-proof prison somewhere. But Bruce is Bruce.
And already had the plan in place for Cyborg.
The plan, their first initial meeting is when he planted the virus. Right. I love that. And I love that Croc's like, damn, that's cold.
Now, the interesting part about this is, we go through the cast of characters and this debate of, Bruce, who are you siding with? Yes. Father, what are you doing? You're siding with them over us. Except what he's not seeing is it's almost like they're looking in a mirror right now. The villains that Batman's protecting are the same as some of the quote-unquote heroes on the other side now. And it becomes an interesting dilemma, moral dilemma right now. At what point in time do you become the villain? When are you now no better than those that you are criticizing? And this really covers a lot of philosophical ground in it with the things that it covers. This is a great fight sequence. Boy, and at this point we needed this. We needed a nice hero-villain fight to go down. Just something to show some great artwork, some great combat. The fluidity of the combat was really terrific on this, and the villains that they used.
And I love that Soup cuts off, Heat Vision slices off Solomon Grundy's arm. Right there, big time. Like, holy crud, that's kind of, again, you're seeing Clark cross the line again.
Well, it's Solomon Grundy, though. I don't think that's going to... I think there's a difference with Solomon Grundy when you do this. Yeah. Than another, it's like taking apart Clayface, right? Yeah. At what point in time do you know that these are the ones that it's okay to do it with? Whereas I think I would have felt differently if it was Calendar Man.
Yeah. Well, and like how Robin is not stopping hitting, Riddler. Yeah. And of course we get the oh my god moment when he throws his staff at Dick Grayson and kills him. Right. I'll tell you, this was one of those oh my god moments. And then it follows up with Soup flying through Grundy. And again, it's Grundy, so is he going to come back from that? Maybe.
Here's the thing. In that moment, though, and this is the difference between the hand cut off and this. Now, this is where you can sit there and look at that and go, at that moment, I don't know that he knows if Grundy's coming back or not, and he certainly did not care. It's like, this needs to end right now because of the situation there with Grayson. Superman, that was a great sequence that proves that Superman's crossed the line.
Yeah. Oh, big time. And this moment, again, Bruce just handles everything wrong in this moment.
Yet you understand
he's
why.
grieving.
Yeah.
You understand 100% why he does it, but he's 100% handles Damian wrong.
Well, and Damian handles him wrong. Yeah. Like, Damian's own guilt drives him. So Bruce and Damian both are in this situation where they're saying and doing things that they shouldn't have done. And here's the people who are really at the wrong on this one are not Bruce and Damian. Right. It's everyone around them. They all could have prevented this from escalating between Bruce and Damian the way they did.
Yes. And though I do like the fact that Clark goes to Catwoman for help. Bruce needs somebody, and it can't be him. Right. There's too much that has gone on between them. But again, this does show there's still somewhat of a friendship that could possibly, maybe slightly be salvaged. Possibly, maybe. Very slim, but the fact that he reaches out to Selena to get her to help Bruce does show there's still something there. And again, as the movie progresses, there's no redemption, there's no saving the friendship. we're still at a point though we kind of can, and I think that this was like the final area where we can save something.
Right.
We see the final death blow of the friendship, at the fortress.
Boy, this is a great Catwoman, and it really shows Bruce and Selina and what they bring. And this is the first time in the film that we get to see him really be Bruce. Where I'm letting go of any of the shell that I've put up, and I'm just going to be myself. And she guides him to that.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a great framing of what the challenges were that he was facing earlier that you were mentioning.
I do like the fact that she's like, hey, just fall apart. I'll hold you together. That for me was just a great line between the two of them. She's like, hey, you're not Batman. Just let it all go. And that, for me, that was just that really cool kind of moment. And that's the first and only time we see Bruce without the cowl on, in this whole movie.
Right. This Ramakrishna bit was really, really cool. I loved seeing this play out in this. Just to see it in animation, see Nightwing become Deadwing, which I don't necessarily love the Deadwing name. But I love the concept, that he becomes Deadman, in this scenario, and boy, does it serve this well.
Now, is there anything like that in the video game, by the way?
No, it doesn't really get to that point.
Okay.
The comics start to delve a lot deeper into the backstory and side stories of this. The game is really more the fight between Bruce and Superman's sides. It's very depth-filled. I don't want to downplay the story that's in the game. Right. What happened was, over time, between the two games, they started to expand out the story even more. So the Deadwing piece, I don't remember that being a part of the first game at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, I like it. It was one of those, at first I was seeing, what? Oh, man, I wish they hadn't killed off Grayson. But then when you see the usage of Deadwing, I was like, okay, I'm cool with this now. And I think that was one of the things that you really needed to see how they were going to use him as Deadman.
Yeah.
Now, Damian introducing Clark to Ra's al Ghul. I was like, another thing I did not 100% see coming. I was like, oh, that is good, Ra's al Ghul. And I'm like, and it's funny because I'm sitting there thinking immediately you should send red flag signals in your head, like, oh, no, don't do this. But it was weird in this universe. I was like, you know what? I could see Ra's siding with Superman on this one. I could see this team up because they both have those similar kind of goals. And I was not at all thinking double cross in this. I 100% was thinking this would be further for Clark's turn, Clark's fall from grace, Clark's becoming the villain would be siding with a guy like Ra's al Ghul. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I was not thinking Ra's al Ghul turning on Clark at all.
So the first appearance of Deadwing is in the Injustice, I'm looking it up, Gods Among Us Year 1 comic series. I mean, that's when the death of Nightwing occurs in the comics.
Oh,
so
okay.
This was pulled from the comics themselves.
Yeah, I think they have a flash in there, a blip in there during the credits about it's based on the game and the comics.
Yep. Well, the comics are really an expansion of the game's story. Because the comics really go into multiple years and multiple seasons that spin off of the two games as well. There's a lot of depth to the game stories, and there's not really contradiction between the games and the comic book stories. There's not really contradiction here either. They just compress it.
I love Mr. Terrific in this, by the way. I thought they did an absolutely brilliant job with him.
The debate,
and this debate and discussion between him and Clark is absolutely one of those moments of the movie that I'm like, this to me made the movie. This right here is one of those sequences that I'm like, I don't find any fault in how they did this. This conversation over the chessboard, everything that Terrific brings up about with the smoking and with the drunk drive, everything they brings up, I'm like, dude, this is 100%. Absolutely brilliant. And I love how, again, it's through the chessboard where check, 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 and they just go back and forth till finally Terrific has the final word with checkmate. Absolutely love this, man.
The debates over philosophy there, where he's like just diving deep into different, like, where do we stop? Do we start with smokers?
Yeah.
Recyclers? Anyone who speeds? Traffic fatalities? Where do we stop? And every time it's, the check piece, you're right. That is just classic on this, and loving it as a chessboard move. It was Superman going, "You're not going to help me, are you?"
Yeah.
That was a great line.
What happens to Mr. Terrific when he won't help him?
Right.
He gets locked up in prison. Again, now this shows more of the turn of Superman. And I love the fact that they don't show us that Superman locked up Mr. Terrific there. It's not until later that we learn he's in the prison now. I thought that was a really cool way to have that sequence, because he's like, "You're not going to help, are you?" And that ends that sequence. We jump to, again, more cool Harley Arrow moments.
Yeah. Harley was really great in this.
Yes.
She's, and I will say in gaming in general, she's been a great character. She's been great in the Arkham games as well. This is it's funny how my evolution of my interest in Harley has grown so much in recent years. This is another great example of it. She's essential to this.
Yes. Definitely 100% for the story-wise, but also just, there's just those little funny moments where, like, behave, Harley. And she just does that wave and that smile, like, "Hey, okay." Oh, man. But, again, Batman and the plan. Inside the Fortress of Solitude is the weapon that can fight Superman. So they got to break into the fortress. I'm like, oh, man, this is not going to end well for the team.
No, and I think you kind of see that, because they're talking about what if it's a desperate mission. And I liked that They were setting that up. They knew they were going into that. Oftentimes that's discussed in comics or comic-related films, and they just they win it. And they make it happen. I love that this is a situation where it's foreboding, and there's a reason for it to be foreboding. Because this does not go well. And so often we see it that way.
Yeah, now I'll tell you, Superman and Wonder Woman, she is feeding the fire, but even that, Soup's starting to turn more and more and more. And I really do like just this moment we almost have between them. And it's like, kind of are they going to? No. He stops it. And I think it's, kind of it was a really neat, just kind of like, okay, kind of get you going and then stop you.
She does debate. I mean, you get to see her philosophy on this, too, in a quick moment. What is she attracted to? The fact that you're something more than the gods because of your code and because of who you are and the fact that you're not cruel and those pieces. And it isn't until later where she starts to view him as cruel that she recognizes the mistake and the direction.
Now, Superman flying in, telling you to stop what you're doing. I love this sequence because Secret Service has got to respond, but they don't have a response for a Kryptonian.
Right.
Now, with me, I'll tell you, if I was living in this universe, first thing I would have done if I was the president of the United States, I would give me kryptonite. Find it.
Realizing that he's being distracted, he recognizes that there's something else afoot here. And he's got to be in his mind immediately going to Bruce, right? Knowing the history between them. This Catwoman's usage in this is fantastic. Her being the one that can help them sneak in, because it is something that normally people can't get into Superman's fortress because of the way that it is.
Yeah, and Paul being there, I love that immediately, that they're like, we got a problem here. If he thinks we're here, and even Bruce can't even finish it up. If he thinks we're here for his father, we're dead. And exactly what we're seeing. Takes out Captain Atom without even breaking a sweat, and it's Paw who tries to calm things down. And I love seeing Paw's role in this, and again, even all the little side stuff with the Atom. This is kind of again, it's Bruce. We're seeing the intelligence of Bruce in this. So I don't know. I was sitting there watching, thinking, okay, maybe they got a shot here. Maybe things are going to not go too horribly for them. Maybe not.
And this is something the father actually could have de-escalated this. And
yes.
I think this is something where that shows how far gone the friendship was. Because there's multiple things that happen here. There was that key sequence. Ra's al Ghul showing up was a key sequence. I think there was no way for this. There was no way for this to go well. There wasn't a window that was big enough for anyone to be able to do anything. You can point at multiple sequences where it could have stopped. And Jonathan Kent really was absolutely the most reasonable, because when he tells them to go, you see that he sees the big picture here. This is what's happening right now is not good. This is out of control. His father is the only one, and I love the use of Jonathan Kent in this.
Yes.
Could not be better written.
Now the death of the Atom, with the again, that was another really neat moment of how they kill him off with the chemotherapy. But there's still a fragment of kryptonite in Bruce's brain, or did that
Clark's brain?
Yeah, Clark's brain. So it's like, does the radiation take care of the kryptonite as well?
I'm guessing that was the piece. They never really explained it in this, so I'm assuming that that's what happened. Like Ra's al Ghul took out the kryptonite.
Oh, and that right there, the arrow to the chest of Jonathan Kent, and Clark even earlier said he's the last bastion, last piece of my humanity, and we see it right there with Ali headshot. oh man, I tell you, this right again. This is the final nail in their friendship. This is it. They will never be able to recover from this moment. Flat out, And even his dying breath, Jonathan is still trying to calm things down. And again, it shows the coolness of Jonathan Kent in this. As he's dying, he's like, forgive them. This was an accident. Still trying to be the peacekeeper, but it's done. That's it. And again, Ra's al Ghul's right there. It's, oh man, this is brilliant play.
Well, he's still trying to teach his son in those moments, which is really awesome. He's putting his kid first, because he's recognizing like this is going to hurt him bad. And I really, really loved how that played out. Superman at this moment, just seeing him in this like dictator role, which is what he becomes at this point. He's, talk about this is so far beyond martial law, but he really has, at this point, it's anything to justify, and he's using violence and a history of violence as a way to justify his course of action.
Yeah,
not realizing that his approach is leading to rebellion, leading to people wanting to rebel, needing to rebel, because you blink and now you've become a criminal. And this goes to play out later, because what Mr. Terrific was concerned about becomes a part of this.
Exactly. And again, this sequence with the rave with the Jokers and all that, I was like, man, I'm like, this is, you're watching to say this is not going to end well. That it's not going to end well. And again, it shows the full fall of Superman. These aren't super villains. These aren't criminals for all practical purposes. They're just people who are gathering and who are like, hey, they're Jokerites or whatever they're calling themselves. They're Joker kids. But I absolutely love seeing this, and I loved how Bruce immediately wants to jump in, but it's Selina who's able to stop him, because you can't help them by dying. And I love just how it really gets to that point.
And this was a great sequence, because when you see this, it really sends to this point of, when it comes to choosing sides, how can you not side against Superman on this one? You have to, right?
Yeah, that right there really does show he's full on heel now. He's full villain mode. He is 100% zero redemption. And part of that was the death of Jonathan Kent was the last of the His last piece of humanity is now gone.
Right. Yeah, and the idea that he knows this whole all started because of the Joker. You know, Superman's kind of like, how can you celebrate that monster when that's the reason why we're even living in a world like this, why things are even the way they are.
Now, it's funny with the breaking into the prison that's on the bottom of the ocean that he can't get to. I love, again, Selina's just like, hey, I love a challenge, but I can't do this,
And the idea of who has the powers to get there, and Bruce always knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
This is a great sequence, and it always plays out well, this sequence, because I remember seeing this on the page, and I love how this plays out in visuals.
Now, it was funny, because before we see it's Plastic Man, I was immediately thinking Aquaman. Because that whole thing where Aquaman leaves, sure. I was thinking, okay, this is going to be Aquaman joining the fray, and we're going to get a fight between Aquaman and Superman. That's how I was playing it out in my head. So when Plastic Man pops up, I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't see this one coming. How's this going to play out?
And especially getting the idea that Plastic Man really has some philosophical reasons to get involved in this too, because he knows in Superman's world that he's creating, at what point in time is he considered automatically a villain based on his past history? Exactly.
So it's kind of neat. Again, and then even the introduction of Amazo, the concept of, the T-spheres are nice, but what if we have something to respond immediately? I'm like, oh, this is getting worse. Now,
this sequence with the infiltration, I thought was really, really well done. Plastic Man is a character I would love to read monthly, because I think when you've got the right writers, they're able to do stuff like this, where he becomes a really, really cool character. And growing up, I didn't appreciate characters like Plastic Man and Elongated Man as much as I do now. But you see them, they're really cool characters with the things that they can do.
Yeah. Now, it's funny, with the Plastic Man breaking out Mr. Terrific, when he uses the key, the first time I watched this, by the way, I didn't realize what finger it was that he made into the key.
Yeah.
Again, little funny moments like that didn't take away from the movie. And I think that, again, it's a great balance of, we've got this really neat jailbreaking sequence where we've got some funny moments going on with Plastic Man and Mr. Terrific playing the straight man. And again, I was like, this is neat. How is he going to get out of here?
And I love that that's this intensity of the escape. And even this danger. Because Plastic Man's counting on the fact that Batman was right. This guy's going to have a way out. And he doesn't totally have that way out. I love Deadwing's appearance here.
Yes. Well, and again, he's needed. And This was a kind of a cool initial first run of Deadwing and what he does. And he takes over Cyborg to blast out the window, so that they can make their escape. It was like, this is a cool moment, and especially love the realization that because Cyborg can see him, and that little salute and a wink as he disappears. I was like, this is cool.
I wonder if that, and it's something you'd like to see more expansion of. You start thinking off the screen in that one where it's like, how did that affect Cyborg? What was that like? There's so many cool opportunities for offshoot sequences in this, and that's part of the fun of reading comics, right? The idea that there's this expanded story. There's these things that you didn't realize that were a part of it. What was Cyborg thinking? What does Damian think after this? More adventures with these characters. Yes. And the comics do expand on a lot of this stuff, but even those, you're like, wow, there's another miniseries that could come out of this. There's another miniseries that could come out of that. This is a very richly developed world.
Yeah, and I would have loved to have seen the conversation that Cyborg and Superman have immediately after the breakout.
Yep.
Yeah, and then, again, I love this usage of the T-spheres. Once Mr. Terrific's out, they're able to hack the sphere and release the footage of Superman killing those Joker acolytes. And it was neat because it took me a while to realize why Bruce did it. It wasn't to turn the world, it was to turn Diana. He needed to show Diana what Clark was doing. Because, she's siding with him because it's about justice. It's about doing what's right. Well, how is murdering these kids what's right? And I love that, again, it shows Bruce, just the level of thinking that Batman has. He's like, planting the seeds of just the seeds of destruction in Superman's team right now. Take out his main supporter, Wonder Woman. And not take her out physically, but get her to realize what's going on. I thought that was a cool thing on his part.
And Superman throwing her words back at her.
Yeah.
Basically saying, this is what you told me. This is what you said you wanted.
Now, Smallville being the site for the Amazo, I was like, oh my God. This, again, shows full-on... Clark would never have put Smallville in any type of danger. Now he's 100% no longer Clark Kent. He is Kal-El. He is Superman. Full on, full turn. Absolutely love this. And I love this sequence where the guy accidentally litters. Now, he didn't stop to pick it up, and so, he did break the law, but is it enough of a breaking the law to have his car exploded and him die?
Well, and then it leads to a catalyst of other behaviors.
Yeah.
That really starts to, other behaviors that, like the police, even right here. Look, Amazo's going after the police. Well, they're doing their jobs, in that moment. But he's looking at it as it's a violation of his authority. Yep. So you can see the logic. Sometimes logic, straight, flat out, quote unquote logic, isn't always correct. And this is a great example where you can see how computer logic would lead Amazo to react the way that he is.
But also Ra's al Ghul logic.
Correct.
Ra's is like, hey, it's not malfunctioning. It's actually functioning perfectly. It's you who are flawed. You need to realize, hey, you got to kill. If you got to make an omelet, you got to break a couple eggs. And this right here is breaking eggs to Ra's al Ghul. So I love that moment, that how Clark realizes, hey, I've got to take down Amazo. I've got to stop this. I made a mistake siding with Ra's al Ghul, so now I got to deal with this. But again, how powerful, Amazo is. This is an awesome fight sequence. And again, it's, fight sequence about 15 minutes of the movie, which, with all the different various parts of it, but, it's still, they put a lot of punch in these sequences. And then I love Diana and the rest of the team flying in, the Justice League coming in for the rescue. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, the four of them will take out Amazo, not really. Again, this movie did a beautiful job with these swerves and stuff I didn't see coming. And I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Also, Clark realizing that he's been set up. Now, here's something that's unrealistic in this sequence right here. And this is proof that it's Elseworlds. Because you see this sequence with Amazo that really should have ended with Hawkman just destroying him.
Yes.
And it's unrealistic. Completely unreal. I liked seeing Hawkman in this. I'm glad that they gave him a spotlight. Yeah. We're seeing him more and more wind up in media, and I'm glad to see the character being utilized more. I'm joking around about the unrealistic part, but it was great to see him. I think Marvel's done a great job of taking some of their characters that are lesser known to the larger audience and making them in a spotlight. I think we're starting to see DC doing it more too, and I think it's a good thing because that's where, when people say, quote, another superhero movie is out, right? These characters have really distinct differences between them, and their storytelling is what makes them unique. And I think this film did a great job of spotlighting, even though it's it's Batman versus Superman with Diana being, a major catalyst over it. Boy, does it spotlight a lot of characters. And,
and I'll tell you, the death of Hawkman followed by the death of Cyborg.
Yep.
were huge to me. I was like, oh my God, Hawkman, because of like, oh, poor Sean. But, just the level of the body count this movie has in the hero realm is like staggering to me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome.
And
it's
villains.
one of the things I loved about it.
Yeah, and villains. I mean, heavy hitter heroes and villains.
Oh, yeah.
So that's me more expanding upon what you're saying, not disputing it. It really gives you this sense of anybody's expendable in this, which isn't something you always feel when you watch these movies. Like, you realize this is true Elseworlds where anybody can go.
Yeah. And I love how we had this moment where it looks like Bruce and Clark are going to work together again. The Trinity is back, baby. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. And they even had that little head nod to each other, kind of like, okay, we got to take down Amazo. And you're thinking in your head, hey, things are going to be okay in this universe now. Clark is seeing straight again. And I really do like, again, that big really swerve that happens. Because now it's looking like the true villain in this is going to be Ra's al Ghul. The Trinity will work together. They'll get things cleared up. And, even Damien is kind of like going back to, hey, I got to protect my father. All this, it's looking like the heroes are going to come back together and be all one happy family again. And I love how the fact that it doesn't go that way.
Well, and wouldn't you be disappointed if it did? Because with how far this went, because we've said it multiple times, there were multiple occurrences here where he can't come back from that. Not truly. And I think this story really embraces that, yes, he can see that he's wrong. There's a difference between seeing that you're wrong and coming back from what you've done.
Yes. And again, it was funny when they were first talking about the Kryptonian technology, I was thinking Phantom Zone, to be honest with you. I was not thinking, even though they had that whole debate about the Elseworlds and the alternate Earths and, all that stuff, I honestly was thinking he was building some type of Phantom Zone thing for Superman. Not this transport device, which I was actually very happy I was wrong on. I like how this story played out.
Yep.
Now, Damien versus Ra's al Ghul would be a really cool fight, but you add Dick Grayson into the mix, and you've got a power combo. And I really do like the fact that Damien and Dick working together were enough to beat Ra's al Ghul. Mm-hmm. That really did play well for me. And it was kind of neat that these two, again, it's that whole brother relationship that they showed, and the fact that Damien killed them, it really does show how cool Dick Grayson is in this. And again, very realistic feel to everything. I was very happy with it.
And the idea that this is, healing and human error and owning your mistakes. Damien has a chance to apologize, which people don't get. You don't always get that opportunity. So he has this rare quality, and it just goes to show one of the things you can learn from this is, make sure you say everything you got to say. Make sure you do everything you got to do, because you never know when you're not going to have that chance, right? Damien gets lucky that this Deadwing thing happened, because otherwise he would have kept heading down that path. Unless Dick Grayson had been there, I don't think Damien's story arc would have gone where it went with this. Yeah, I do think he would have turned on Ra's al Ghul like he did, because that happened before he knew about Deadwing. But I don't know that the end result would have been what it could be with this.
Yeah.
Because of that. It was nice to see that moment between the two. Damien's going to go down a different path because of it. Yes.
And I do like Plastic Man getting involved in the fight and just what he brought to the table. Again, he's a character that, he's underutilized is a good word for it, or just I don't know. It's
misunderstood too. I think
misunderstood. Yes.
I think when he's utilized really, really well, like I love him on team books when he's used well, and you see situations like this. He's a character when they put him on the Justice League or other teams. Like on the Terrifics, for example, that was a great use of the character. I think he's a character who I've always enjoyed when they've managed to put him on team books, and I hope we see him on something else soon, because I like the character.
Yeah. Oh, big time. And again, the seeing him work together. He was the big the big way to take out Amazo. So that was kind of cool. And then this final fight sequencing between Ra's al Ghul versus Damian against the Robins, let's just say, it was a really cool moment. And again, it goes back to the watch his feet, wait for it, you got to do it. And to your point, this really gave Damian his chance to apologize and make atonement for what he did. And I love this dialogue between them. I love the fact that Dick's like, hey, already forgiven, man. It's cool. Again, shows the coolness of Dick Grayson.
I like that he can't explain what actually happened to him, and that it's not as important at the moment. They've got to have this moment. This is a powerful, well-written moment. And it serves a storytelling purpose because I can't really tell you about that right now. We already know this, so we don't need to hear the recap. But this is the moment that we all wanted at this point. And you just know Damien's going to be better because of the interaction with his big brother.
Well, he put away the sword.
Yep.
He's going to go back to the sticks and not be a killer. And I loved this sequence right here where Diana's like, the battle's won, and Clark's like, and now you're all under arrest going to jail for your crimes. Clark isn't, it's not bring back the band together again. Clark is still Clark. He's still full-on evil here. And even when Diana calls him on it, he's like, have you turned on me too? That's it. You're now against me, so that means you're now a villain. You're now a criminal. I'm like, holy crud. This, for me, was a great, great moment. I absolutely love the fact that we don't get the cheery resolution between Clark and the heroes. We still get evil Clark.
And he's bound
until good Clark shows up.
Yeah. And this reminds me of, if there's one thing I really did like in Superman 3, it was the battle between the two Supermen.
Yeah.
And the idea of there being, Superman versus, looking at a mirror of himself with bad choices. And how being able to face that part of yourself and never hope you never wind up down that path. I like that Superman's recognizing like his own qualities in this guy. Like he's seeing like, I have that stubbornness. I have these streaks that you're talking about. And he's trying to hit him with, like these are true. Like I get how you wound up here. I get who you are. I can see this. I also like that good Superman, just because he's good, isn't weak, like to the evil Superman, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Because too often when you do this, you make the evil guy, because he can't hold back and those type of things, that he somehow just immediately overpowers the good guy. I like in this one, they are evenly matched, and you see how evenly matched that they are.
But I do like the point that evil Superman makes about how you're holding back. I held back when I was you. I don't hold back anymore. And Clark, even though Clark knows this guy can take a full punch, Clark is holding back. The good guy is actually Earth 1 Superman is holding back in this fight sequence. And we do see Earth 22 Superman get the edge. And I think that is kind of neat how, again, this is a great fight sequence. Two Superman 100% throwing down, but the Superman who doesn't hold back, the Superman who has no problem completely unloading, is the one who wins this fight. And it's not just about, though, it wasn't just about Superman versus Superman. Bruce being Bruce, he had multiple levels of strategy going on. He called after 22 takes on 1, he calls in the big guns. And I love the fact that who he actually calls in next, because I was kind of expecting to see Ma or Pa Kent come in, but much better play how he went with it.
See, I think it was a plan all along, though, was for Lois to
100%.
come in.
I 100% believe Bruce said, go get Superman 1 first, and then go get a Lois Lane. And that was the plan for Terrific. He knew Superman 1 would be a beatdown, would be a physical fight, but it wouldn't be the one who stops him. He knew Lois Lane would actually stop him. That's why I said bring in the big guns, taken from the Justice League movie. 100% thought this was absolutely perfect. And again, and it even add to the fact that it's a pregnant Lois Lane really adds to just the oh my god factor. Now, part of me was worried that this Superman was so far gone that something horrible would happen to this Lois. And I'm sitting there going, please, dear God, don't let him kill her. Please, dear God, don't let him kill her. But to be honest, I didn't know this was going to play out the way it was going to play out. And that's something I absolutely loved about this, that I didn't know she was going to be able to talk him down.
I love her debate off of this, because she's giving what you were looking for earlier. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that Bruce could do this the way that Lois did. And Bruce, it's funny, Bruce goes where you were thinking earlier, but in really the only way that he possibly can, because he's no longer... He's not capable, I think. This Bruce, at this stage, is not capable of doing this. Lois was. She was able to hit him to the core in a way that... It's funny. In some ways, Bruce is doing exactly what you suggested he do earlier. He just wasn't capable of being the one to deliver the message.
Right. Yeah, well, at that point in time, he could, Yeah, it's one of those neat things where... you got a plan. You're like, I wish he would have done this, but you know why he didn't. And I think that's the great thing about this story, that, how this played out was absolutely brilliant. 100%. This, to me, was a great story that played out. Everybody felt very real and true. And I think that's one of the things that all these ideas that I was thinking off page about, I'm like, it couldn't have happened. Just because of how the characters were. And now, going forward, who knows what this universe is going to be like. And that's something I would like to see, the continuing stories of the Injustice universe. I would like to see what Bruce is like in the future. And the fact that Clark said, hey, I'm not going to break out of any prison you put me in, and when you need me, I'll help. And just what does that mean for Clark? What's his prison? Where's he going to be? And I think that's just, there's so many different stories. What about this? What about that? What happens next?
This really is the story that's encompassed in year one. So there is more story to this available.
Oh, cool.
So and they even reference it in the credits when they say Injustice Year 1. There were multiple years of story, including Year 0, that predates this. They have some really cool stories that go along. They even have one that is told from the perspective of Harley.
Oh, nice.
Which is cool. So they did a lot with this world in comics that expanded, and they did a lot in the game that expanded it. So this is a snapshot of the story, and it's a really good snapshot. I think for anybody who's you mentioned earlier, I don't know, I'd love an opportunity to be able to see the game's story, but I haven't played the game, nor do I know whether or not I will. And I think that was the point of this, was to open that doorway up. And it's very interesting to see a DC property that really came from a video game and expanded into comics and then expanded into animation, versus it being the comic or the TV show or film that led into the game. It was cool to see this fleshed out the way that it was.
Oh, big time. And I'll tell you, it was something that, again, it has me excited to read the comics. It has me wanting to pick up and read those comics. And it even has me curious about the video game, which, to be honest, I really it wasn't on my radar. Now, I've been looking at some different DC games maybe that you go into and give them a try. Injustice was never one that I was like, I think I'm going to give that a try. Now, I'm like, I'm going to do some research on this. Maybe this is something I may give this a try. So it's kind of that this movie really has done some good in expanding, my horizons, expanding on what I want. So if this is someone's first introduction to this universe, they could possibly pull in more readers, pull in more gamers, out of this.
Yep. And that's where I got excited about the video game tie-in to it. That's why I got excited about this animation tie-in to it. I think there's a ready-made audience who are gamers that would love comics. What draws me to games, my favorite thing about games, is story. It's the sense of immersion. So, like I mentioned, I'm not a great fighting game guy. I'm not. I'm not saying I'm good at it. I don't. I'm more of a button masher in my gameplay style.
Yep.
I do develop some strategy along the way, but it's also very limited to certain buttons that I'm comfortable with, certain moves that I get comfortable with. Then eventually I get proud of myself when I figure out, oh my gosh, I can do this one really cool move if I do this, and I'm able to recreate it. Maybe not 100% of the time, but I'm able to do it often enough that I'm going to keep trying it. And that's fun too. But to me, it's always the progression. Like, I'm immersed in I'm driving the progression of the story. I can be limited in my gameplay style with it, but enjoy the fact that I'm progressing the story. I think when you think about that, serialized storytelling in comics is a ready-made marriage for your RPG game players. Anybody who likes story-driven games where there's an ongoing narrative or a lengthy narrative would like serialized comics. And I feel like it's an audience. I'm glad to see them doing like the Fortnite tie-ins, because that was excellent. I really liked the Fortnite tie-in. And that's something where I think back in the day, that was a good way to bring comic fans into games. Now I think it's a good way to bring gamers into comics, and for gamers to give added swag that links to the game, right? The Fortnite, like the fact that you could get extra stuff in Fortnite from it, which was really cool. Is if you're reading the comics, you could get gamers codes to add Batman stuff into Fortnite. I thought was a neat little type of thing as well. I love seeing stuff like this, and I think it's really, really great that we have games are doing more with comics. This was good. This was really, really good. I'm actually thrilled that you liked it so much that you might read more, or you might actually try out the game. I think you'd like the game. It's interesting sort of. If you do pick it up, if you pick it up, let us know. Because here's the thing: you can get game. Definitely. That game you can get cheap now because they have the Injustice: Gods Among Us Game of the Year edition, which has like all of the download content, which is all the extra characters and stuff. The fun part is, even if you're not good at those type of games, there's enough difference between the characters that there's just a lot to do.
Now, is there a super easy mode? Because I will need
Sure.
that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's an easy mode to it. Absolutely. And that's not... Here's the thing. It's... Even with the easy mode, this is not to scare you off. There's still a challenge to it, because here's what you don't want. You don't want something you're blowing through, but you don't want something that's so hard that you're like, I am so frustrated with this now. The easy mode on it has a challenge to it. It's also a great way to learn the game, because you're not being beat. You're winning still along the way.
Yeah.
Part of the fun of the easy mode is learning, and they have training things in it too, where you're not being attacked, but you're learning how to do moves.
See, that's the kind of stuff that I wish more of the games had, like in a training room where I could just go in, even if it's not even a physical person, if it's like a punching bag. Because in the real world, what happens? You don't start off combat. You start off punching and throwing in kicks and learning how to do this stuff. Whereas in the video game world, you jump right into combat. And
That's not true. A lot of the fighting games now actually have training rooms in them for just what you're talking about. Yeah. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. There's a lot more opportunity to be eased into the game now than there used to be.
Cool.
So, and I think it's because of what you're talking about. I think your criticism's valid. I think that was a problem, and I think more of your company, not saying everyone does, but a lot more of them do now. They have training rooms because they don't want to alienate players. And they have easy modes for what you're talking about. And easy mode, a lot of times, before used to be considered like baby mode and stuff like that. It's so not now. They've actually put into games what they call now story mode, where the idea is you're a gamer who's like, I want to be immersed into this. I want to play. I want to feel like I'm progressing the story, but I don't want to be frustrated by it. I want to feel like, yes, there's a challenge to it, but there's also the interactivity is really what I'm looking for. And it feels a lot more like an interactive story than this like painful. And if you're like, here's the nice part about that. Usually in most of these, if you feel it's too easy, you can just bump up the difficulty.
Cool.
I'd be curious to see. Let us know if you end up trying it, because it'd be nice down the road just to hear or if you follow up on the comics and what you think of them, because I think it'd be great to hear you coming at it from a fresh perspective, because the comics were excellent. They were excellent. Tom Taylor wrote them. They're excellent. So if you like this story, there's a lot more to be delved into.
you really can't go wrong with Tom Taylor. He's one of those writers that has actually done some really cool stuff. So yeah, I'll definitely give those a try. By the way, that's 100%. I'm going to have some reading ahead of me.
Yeah, I can't recommend them enough.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address. You can reach out to us that way if you'd like. RagingBullets.com is our show website, and that's the hub where you can find out about the new releases. It does feed into Twitter. It does feed into our Facebook fan page. We're also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community, and I reference it all the time. It's the place I go for news and commentary. The people there are fantastic, and I want to thank everyone that participates in that because we're really lucky to be associated with all of you. So thank you for making that a safe place to just talk comics and pop culture in general. The About Us section of our show website is where you can find out how to connect to us on social media and in gaming platforms. We're sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
We have the Batman Dark Knight Returns board game and the deluxe edition of the board game. Both of those are 25% off. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they have the Batman Adventures trade paperbacks. And wow, are they offered at an amazing discount. Batman Adventures Riddle Me This trade paperback and Batman Adventures Robin the Boy Wonder trade paperback. Both $9.99 regularly, 65% off, only $3.49 each. That's an amazing deal. Batman Adventures Cat Got Your Tongue trade paperback, $9.99 regularly, 60% off, only $3.99. We've been talking animation on this, and it's great to see so many of these cool animation tie-ins. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be back, and we're going to be beginning a two-part look at, first we're going to start looking at Batman the Audio Adventure Special, but then we're going to look at Aquaman and Green Arrow, Black Manta, and Aquaman the Becoming as a kind of a dive on what's going on with Aquaman right now. So that's going to be the next two shows. So we will see you next week to kick that off.
Bye!
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
we're going to
Jim,
I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.